over the past year, I have bought quite the stack of trades and graphic novels that I have yet to read. I think I've only read one of those. I managed to slip one of those into a weekly reading session. But now I don't have to commit to my library books for the week, so I have the time now to read those trades. And another reason why I'm thinking, it makes me think that it's almost coming to another new year. So the year is almost up, and I've only read one of those books that I have purchased. So that's why I think I really should start reading those books. Okay, so with all of that being said, let's get on with this wrap-up. And one of the first books, I know this book is kind of really trendy in BookTube. And a lot of the times, being someone who reads a lot of trades and comics, I tend to don't really think of myself as being that much a part of BookTube. I tend to think of myself more as a comic book reader than a BookTuber. But yes, this book was kind of trendy, so I will admit I was kind of hesitant to read it. I will admit that when I first saw this book, I was really intrigued. I was really curious about it. But then I saw like people in BookTube who don't normally read comics, I saw reading this and talking about it. And then I was kind of like, oh, you know, it's going to be one of those ho-hum books. It's going to be one of those overly hyped books that's just not going to be that great. But I finally got around to reading it this week. And I do have to say, by all means, do not read this in public. I took this with me to a doctor's appointment, and the looks I got carrying this around and reading this in public, let's just say, yeah, you should not do that. If you're not familiar with what this book is about, I know you must have been living under a rock, because I think everybody has talked about sex criminals. It's about these two people who have the ability that when they orgasm, and I'm saying this and you guys know that a good 98% of the books I talk about on my channel are not safe for kids. These are mature titles. This is very mature, so this is definitely not for kids. So when these two people orgasm, they have the ability to stop time. So while they're in the refractory period, time and space are kind of frozen. The guy, John, he calls it Cum World. And the girl, Susie, she calls it the Quiet. And while they're in this time, they kind of experiment with it and do things that you wouldn't normally be able to do once, you know, you're the only one who can walk around and do things. I love the way this is narrated because it kind of is like, you know, it starts out with Susie introducing herself and how she first discovered this by masturbating in the bathtub when she was a little girl. And it's already such an awkward topic, you know, masturbation. And she tries to approach other girls and talk about it. And it's so weird. And she never really finds out if anyone else can do this until miraculously one day she meets John at a party. And he just happens to seem like such a perfect match for her because she's talking about Lolita. And he mentions that it's one of his favorite books. And he's reading word for word text, you know, quotes from the book. And did I mention that she's a librarian? That's one of the things I've not heard anyone on BookTube say about this book. That it's about a librarian who works in a library. She's trying to save her library. And that's one of the things, that's why they're sex criminals. Because yes, they go and they rob banks. They rob businesses to try to get the money to save the bank. By all means, it is not a selfish act. They're doing this because she loves her library and she has a fear of the library being closed down, being torn down and paved over and being sold as a lot and turning to God knows what. So I don't want to say too much more about this, besides the fact that if there is one other person who shares this power, why are there not other people? Maybe there are a lot of other people who share this same power. So yes, this is a very interesting story that people have the ability to stop time. And I thought it was kind of cool. The artwork has this kind of trippy lights and color effect going on when they're in the quiet or cum world or whatever you want to call it. And yes, there are some very graphic sex scenes. There are very graphic dialogue. I love the jokes. It's kind of in the vein of Kevin Smith's Clerks. If you like that kind of raunchy, dirty talk, then this book is for you. I love how they made a dedication for all those who've ever rubbed one out. I thought that was kind of funny that they would say that. And it's funny. It's just a funny, not too serious of a book. And I will have to admit, I used to be a big, huge Marvel fan, but in the past year, I've been seeing a lot of good material coming out of Image Comics, and I'm saying more mature content coming out of Image Comics. I'm really appreciating Image more than Marvel or DC, just for that fact. They realize that there are adult comic book readers, so they're not trying to appeal to kids anymore, and this whole, like, stereotype that the typical comic book reader is a child. And I think they've realized that those children who grew up reading comics are now grown up and they want something more substantial than superheroes and Archie comics. So yes, I absolutely loved this book. I didn't think it was a strong 5-star book, but I did rate this 4 out of 5 stars. If you have yet to read this, and like I said, you enjoy raunchy dialogue and humor, and you're not like prudish, you're not scared of seeing a few sex scenes or things like money shots frozen in the air, then by all means, check out this book. It is well worth the read. Up next we have Sex, the Summer of Heart. This is volume 1, and this is another Image Comics. This one, I was kind of like, I'd never heard of it, but I happened to see it on Amazon. It got recommended to me, and I was hoping it was gonna be like Sex Criminals, because, you know, and it's got this whole parental advisory thing. So the whole thing, they're trying to sell you this comic based on the pure shock value. Well, anyways, what this book is about is basically about a Batman-type hero who has retired, and it's a what-if, you know, type of thing where there's a Catwoman-type villain, and she's called like something Lynx Woman or something like that, and the Batman type guy is called the Saint, and they're both retired. She owns a whorehouse, and it takes place in a Gotham-like city called New Saturn or something like that. Anyways, to get to the gist of it is, it's classified as a romance/drama. So it is like a crime drama. There's like gangsters with villains. There's even a villain that's like the Joker that's called the Prankster or something like that. So it is really unoriginal. It's too much like Batman. And I think the only reason that I didn't give this book a lesser rating than 3 stars, because I rated this 3 out of 5 stars on Goodreads, was because of the gratuitous sex. There is lots of gratuitous sex. That's the only reason this book was worth reading and continuing on with, just because of that stuff. The artwork is decent. It is good. But one of the things I didn't get while reading this was that, like, every once in a while there'd be a color highlighted word in the text, and I was almost wondering, I was like, is this like some kind of hidden story, and if you only read those words it tells a different story? But no, it doesn't. And I think the only people that would understand what's going on with those would be the people who created this book. And I gotta be careful what I share with you guys, because like I said, there's a lot of like inappropriate scenes. in this book. But yeah, I only rated this one 3 out of 5 stars. I really don't think that I'm going to continue on with this series. It just wasn't that great. Show you a few more. So yeah, it just wasn't that great. I mean, Batman, it's just unoriginal. So yeah. After that, I read Pretty Deadly. This is volume 1, and this is also another Image comic, except this time it is a Western fantasy. And it involves, like, there's this bunny skeleton and a butterfly, and I think they represent death and rebirth, and they, like, talk to each other as they go around different places. The artwork was absolutely amazing, but the story was just sort of okay. And this is another one I gotta be careful what I show you, because a lot of these Image books are very graphic and for mature readers anyway, so. But yeah, this one was another one where there's a gunfighter, a female gunfighter, and she's like Death's daughter or something like that. And it just, the story was just kind of hard to keep track of. Like, I didn't really know what was going on, and it was just these people traveling out west, and it was okay. This one I also rated only 3 out of 5 stars. I know that I have seen this on BookTube before. But yeah, it was just okay. I mean, the artwork style is kind of, like, neat. I've never seen anything really like it. And it was a decent read, but it just didn't... It was kind of weird and, like, hard to keep up with what was going on in the story. So, up next we have Black Science, which is another Image comic. And this one involves dimension hopping. So it's kind of a classic 1950s sci-fi look to it. The artwork is amazing. And they kind of explain the Eververse, is what they call it, being like an onion and the layers of an onion instead of like the string theory where it's a bunched up string and everywhere it touches the string is a different possibility. Instead, for them, it's like an onion. And there are different dimensions where there are frog and fish people, or maybe there's apes, or, you know, worlds with aliens. It's so many different possibilities. This book kind of reminded me of Sliders. And this is a mature title, but it didn't really have anything really objectionable besides violence and language. There's not really too much nudity in it. But I really did enjoy this book. If you were a fan of the TV show Sliders, then I would definitely recommend this. And I did rate this 5 out of 5 stars. It was a really, really good book. And this was one that was recommended to me by another person. I can't remember who recommended it to me. I wish I knew now, because I would like to thank them. If you're still watching, thank you for recommending this to me. I cannot wait to read Volume 2. This was a great series. Even if you're not a comic book person and you're really into sci-fi, you might want to check this out. It's well worth the read. Okay, up next we have John Constantine's Hellblazer Volume 4, The Family Man. This one was just okay. Sometimes the story was about the family man, but it seemed to jump around and didn't really finish the story until after a couple of other stories. At times, the artwork is varied. Like, it seems like they use multiple artists to complete this. I do like the mixed media covers that they show, and sometimes the artwork was really nice, and other times the artwork was just kind of blah. And same goes for the stories. Some of the stories were really, really good, like 4-star stories. Like, there was one about this guy who, like, had possessed a bulldog in a junkyard. That was a great story. There was another one. It was about, like, fictional characters in the real world. It was just okay. So overall, it was just okay, and I only rated this 3 out of 5 stars. And to tell you the truth, this will probably be the only non-Image comic that I've read for the week. Because all the books I read this week were Image Comics, except for this one. So yeah, that's that. Okay, up next we have The Wicked and the Divine, Volume 1, The Faust Act. Now, this is another Image comic, and I have to be flat out honest with you guys. This is another book that's been kind of really trendy on BookTube. And the thing that drives me bonkers about when graphic novels and comics become trendy on BookTube, most of the time it's coming from people who don't know a thing about comics. They just like start talking about a book and everybody just follows along with it. But this is one of those books that actually was very good. Believe all the hype about this. One other thing I wanted to say about this was that everything I have heard on BookTube talked about this book didn't really give me much interest in reading it, because a couple people just had a lot of the details of the book kind of really misconstrued. Like, people were saying that they're Greek gods, like, reincarnated or something like that. And it's like, oh, that's not what it is. Basically, you have, like, present day, and it takes place in England, like London, I think. And you have these young teenagers, and every 93 years, these different deities, yes, they are deities, they are not Greek gods, they may even, some of them may be Greek gods, some of them are from different regions of the world, like one of them is Lucifer, there was one that was Baal or something like that, and the Morrigan, there were different deities represented, and what happens is they incarnate an existing like teenager, and when that happens they become self-aware that they are that aspect of that deity, and they have the powers of that deity and that knowledge of that deity, and it happens every 93 years. So like it shows different time periods where they had been in the world and how they interact with the world. But there is a murder mystery thrown into the mix of all that, which just really made this for an interesting read. I really enjoyed this. I thought the artwork was great, and the whole like concept of having like these deities like inhabit like teenagers, and they're only allowed to inhabit them for 2 years, and then they have to quote unquote die. So it kind of made for a really interesting story. I really didn't think I was going to enjoy this until I really got into it, and I was like, wow, this really is a really good story. And there's not too much more I can say about it without spoiling it, but I really did enjoy this. I really do think it's worthwhile checking out, and I did rate this 5 out of 5 stars on Goodreads. And this is another library book. Like the last one was a library book. All the other books were books that I had bought and I own. But yeah, so this was a really good story. If you are into mythology or, you know, even murder mysteries, you might enjoy this too. So definitely check this one out. And I think this is going to be my last book in my weekly wrap-up. So I'm going to end it here. If you've read any of these, let me know what you thought of them, or if you have any intentions of reading any of them, let me know. I'm always interested to know whether you guys are wanting to read something that I have read. So that is it. If you're not already subscribed, feel free to click that subscribe button so you know when I upload my videos. And next week's weekly wrap-up is probably going to be a little bit late because it is... next Thursday is Thanksgiving in the United States. So because of that holiday, I'm going to be out of town. And I don't think that I'm going to be able to upload on a Friday or even a Saturday like I normally do. It might not go up till next Sunday or possibly even Monday. So thanks for watching. Until next time, later guys.